Welcome everyone. In this video I will show you a camera that caught my attention on Instagram, the Hawkeye Firefly Split V6 Pro. I kept seeing clips of this little module capable of shooting 6K footage, and what really caught my attention was that it packs a 1-inch Sony sensor. That's the kind of sensor you find in serious compact cameras and not in tiny FPV modules. I immediately thought that I need to try this out, especially for my microscope. I've been thinking about getting a dedicated 4K capable camera for my microscope for a long time, but I never bought one because my budget only allowed those with very small sensors and limited capabilities. Inside the box, everything was neatly arranged in a protective foam. A manual with links to online resources, a 5-button remote controller for operating the camera. It is especially interesting because it only has 2 wires. I will talk about this later in more detail. A heatsink to keep the board from overheating. I will also talk about the necessity of this part later in more detail. A 3D printed lens hood for the default lens. 2 sets of 5-pin cables for power, trigger and analog video output. A C-mount plastic shell with an infrared filter lens for more serious optics, and this sensor really deserves it. An FPV enclosure with the default M16 f2.8 lens with 102 degrees field of view. A mainboard with the FPV camera already attached to it, and an additional 1 meter soft ribbon cable for separating the sensor further away from the mainboard. The camera module has several connectivity options. A micro HDMI for connecting to an external monitor or wireless video transmitter. 5-pin connector with power, AV signal and trigger connections for video and photo separately. A 2-pin connector for the remote controller. USB-C for powering the camera, charging the battery, or even streaming video to a PC. A microSD memory card slot supporting up to 256 GB of storage. And Wi-Fi, which connects to the OK app for live view and full remote configuration. The remote controller is clever. It only uses 2 wires, but it can detect all 5 buttons using different voltage levels. This is solved by building a voltage divider ladder, and whenever a button is pressed, a different part of the ladder is activated. I even reverse engineered it and confirmed this with the manufacturer. This gave me ideas for a custom remote project in the future. The camera is quite flexible with power. We can use USB-C from a charger or power bank. We can use the 5-pin connector and supply it with 7 to 26 volts. And we can even use a lithium-ion battery soldered to the internal pads on the PCB. I decided to use a 2000 mAh lithium battery to make the camera more portable. This needed a little DIY, but the manufacturer described the necessary steps in the manual. After carefully prying off the bottom metal shield, the Wi-Fi module and the rest of the PCB are revealed. Looking a bit closer, we can find the solder tabs for the battery. I decided to connect the battery to the PCB with a terminal cable, so that when I don't need the battery, I can disconnect it from the board. It is also safer to solder the wires than the live battery. Luckily, the battery came with the necessary cable, so I just had to solder it. It is a bit tedious, but not an impossible job. Since the board has multiple layers, the tabs need a little extra time and heat to warm up properly. After cleaning the residues from the board, I put the cover back. There is still a large gap between the solder joints and the metal cover, so no extra caution is needed, but if you are worried, you can add a blob of hot glue there. When plugged in via USB, the board charges the battery. A small red LED near the USB-C port lights up during charging and turns off when it is full. Since I already knew how to pry off the metal shield, I did it on the other side of the module as well. Here we can find the processor, the memory, and other components. Since the heatsink is smaller than the surface of the shield, revealing the components helps us to position the heatsink exactly over the processor and make its role more meaningful. Speaking of heatsinks, this camera runs hot. During streaming, the metal shell hit 70 degrees Celsius in my test. The included heatsink is almost mandatory, especially because the shell can get so hot that it almost burns your fingers when you try to use the buttons on the module. An alternative option could be a small active cooler originally designed for Raspberry Pi microcomputers. But I did not use it at this point because it would need an additional 5-watt supply, which would be cumbersome to incorporate. Apart from these 2 options, I also thought about a simple 40 mm 5-watt fan. Even a small fan can bring the temperature down by 30 degrees Celsius. Passive cooling works for short sessions, but for longer recordings, I recommend airflow combined with the heatsink. The camera can be used with the mobile phone as an external display. We can not only get the audio-video signal on the phone screen, but we can also adjust all the settings. After long pressing the Wi-Fi button on the camera module, it will start to advertise its own Wi-Fi shortly. Once it's found by the phone, we can connect to it, and the password for it can be found in the manual. The camera has an app called OK, and it can be downloaded from the Play Store for Android users. Once we connect to the camera, we get the live picture immediately. We can touch the resolution and all the list of available options pops up. As you can see, I'm running the camera in 6K mode. Then we can dive deeper and open the settings. This contains all the settings for the current mode. In video mode, we see the available options: resolution, recording modes, gyro log for post stabilization, dynamic range, noise reduction, and image stabilization. All of this is adjustable from the app, and it is actually easier to do it here than with the remote controller. There are similar options for photo mode as well. We can adjust the resolution, exposure value, shutter speed, photo quality, metering type and image type, and so on. Furthermore, we can adjust more device-specific options such as Wi-Fi settings, display, contrast, beep, sound, and so on. The first simple test I did was to try the digital zoom. Due to its 6K capability, the digital zoom is one of its strengths. I placed the camera in the same spot where I usually put my phone when I record my videos on my desk. Then I zoomed in as much as the camera allowed. Even at the largest zoom level, I could read almost all the text on my little CH32 board. Not too bad. Since I recorded in 6K, I had to scale back the footage to 70%, so I didn't crop the footage down to 4K. To put the zoom level into perspective, I did the same test with my good old Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. It can record in 4K, so I used it as a reference and zoomed in as much as possible with the digital zoom. I could zoom in more, but even at the same zoom level, when the circuit board fills the same area of the screen, the details of the picture were much worse. This is what a few years of technology difference and a much larger sensor can do. To give it some more context, I recorded some outdoor footage as well. Better and more realistic light conditions, and most importantly, a better C-mount lens. I DIY'd the camera setup around this sensor and used it to record outdoors. I will show you the DIY things in a few minutes, so stay tuned. As you can see, the footage is quite good even when fully zoomed in, but it is absolutely great when it is fully zoomed out. As I said, the shots are handheld and there was no active stabilization, so it is pretty good. Actually, if I turned on the stabilization, I could not zoom in as much as I could without it. But this is completely understandable because the stabilization is most probably done by actively cropping the picture while recording based on the data from the onboard gyroscope. At least this is how action cameras work, and I expect this camera to work in a similar fashion. While I was at this location, I also did some panning, both with and without stabilization, to see if the camera suffers from rolling shutter. It seems to me that it does not, and the footage is smooth, not skewed. But this was a very simplified test, so more work is needed here. Still outside, I looked at the image stabilization a bit more. I held the camera in my hand and walked forward at a normal speed. First without and then with image stabilization. I turned on the stabilization and put it to the maximum level. Due to the stabilization, more cropping was applied to the footage and it became somewhat more stable, but it is quite far from, for example, a GoPro. I repeated the test at a lower resolution, Full HD, because I know that my GoPro performs much better in lower resolutions. Again, apart from cropping, I could not notice very significant differences. Finally, I tested the horizontal stabilization, and this worked better than the regular stabilization. I rolled the camera quite a lot, and although the image was moving with the rolling, it did not move as much as the camera itself. So I guess that this worked to some extent. Another interesting thing is the noise performance of the camera at different ISO settings. I used the two extreme values of ISO, 100 and 6400, and zoomed in fully using the digital zoom. At ISO 100, there's barely any noticeable noise in the picture. It is very smooth and very sharp. I should note that I used the C-mount lens with a fully open aperture, which can contribute to softness. At ISO 6400, the picture is much noisier and mushier. A lot of small particles and artifacts can be observed, but overall the image quality is still good when no digital zoom is applied. For fun, let's also look at still images. They are both JPEG images captured at ISO 100 and ISO 6400. And just to have a better reference, I also included an image from my Ricoh GR2 APS-C camera at ISO 400. Now, as I promised, I will also show you some DIY work. Since I managed to destroy the thread in the C-mount shell that came with the kit, I had to make my own. I 3D printed a larger housing that can not only accommodate the sensor, but it also had a 1/4 inch threaded mount and a cold shoe adapter. So I can put the setup on a tripod and mount a monitor on top of the camera body. The sole of the wall shell is a metal C-mount flange. This will never get destroyed, and I can confidently attach heavy zoom lenses to it without a risk. The rear panel is made to accommodate the camera electronics, plus it has a small groove where the soft ribbon cable can go through. The bottom of the enclosure has the 1/4 inch brass insert nut for standard photography tripod threads. The earlier footage you saw was captured with this kit, and this 16mm lens was attached to the camera. Assembling the wall setup was quite easy. I designed it to be simple to assemble. If you decide to buy this camera module and adapt my 3D printable enclosure, please consider becoming a channel member to get access to the 3D files. The only challenging part was to attach and fix the infrared filter lens in front of the sensor. I ended up using a blob of hot glue, but since the enclosure is not final yet, I will probably come up with a smarter solution. The seat for the sensor was made to tightly accommodate the PCB. As you might know, the optical system is very sensitive to the flange focal distance. If the sensor is further away than this distance, there is no way to achieve infinity focus, and if the sensor is too close to the back of the lens, then the focus range can become very narrow and most of the image will be blurry. Since it is a temporary test enclosure, the battery and the remote controller did not get any dedicated place. I actually have an alternative version for the remote controller, and once I receive it, I will show it to you. But for now, I use the original remote and I just attach it to the enclosure with double-sided adhesive tape. Let's keep it simple. Also, I attached the heatsink to the metal shell to improve heat dissipation. The final setup with the 7-inch external monitor and the GorillaPod style tripod looks quite decent in my opinion. The monitor makes it a bit bulky, but if we replace it with a phone, it becomes more manageable and sleek. But for now, for testing purposes, I use it with this setup. All in all, I'm very impressed by this camera and its capabilities. Nowadays, every other miniature camera can record in 4K and 60 FPS, yes, but they have much smaller sensors. In this case, a larger sensor matters a lot because it improves the noise performance and the image quality. Due to the high resolution capabilities, the digital zoom on this camera is extremely good. Even at maximum zoom level, the image quality is acceptable. The flexibility in video and photography modes is great. Not every camera has so many options. The possibilities are almost as good as with a dedicated camera, except that this camera is more tailored for FPV applications. Ultimately, I see this device's biggest potential in its removable 1-inch type sensor. It is a big deal that I can remove the sensor and put it in a C-mount shell and then attach better lenses to it. Not just C-mount lenses, but with adapters, regular camera lenses can also be attached. Then the camera can become as competitive as some commercial point-and-shoot cameras, especially because many of them don't even have a sensor this large. For me, one of the applications where I will benefit most from this camera is using it with my meteorological microscope. I already started to adapt it, but I still need some tweaks and to clean the optics of my microscope to record proper images. Then I will make a separate video on that topic as well. I wrote a detailed article about the topic and published it on my website. Please visit it, even if you won't read the article, because I added extra pictures and links there. There are links to the manufacturer's website and social media as well, so if you want to know more details about the product, I highly recommend checking out their website. Plus, I put an AliExpress affiliate link in the description if you are interested in buying the camera and the other accessories. Using my links does not cost you extra, but it helps my channel grow. I spent much more money on the accessories than the cost of the camera, so it would be nice to recuperate part of that money. Also, if you think that my video helped you, please consider becoming a channel member so you can contribute to future projects and also get access to exclusive content. I hope that this video was useful to you, and I will see you in the next video.